Good, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for coming. You saved us coming in here at the last minute. My name is, for those of you who don't know me, and I don't think there's too many in the room, but I'm Joe Grouse. I'm the chair of the Town Council Study Committee. With me here up at the podium, Jeff Carlson, Bo Barber, Jill Veith, Caroline Baltzer, and Tom Dixon in the audience are some of the other members, so we do have a quorum. I did. I gave it to Sophia at the. No, I emailed it to her, and she had it. Oh yeah. Sorry, technical difficulties. Sorry, just trying to find our PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. Alrighty. I'd like to call to order a Saturday morning meeting of the Town Council Study Committee for the purpose of holding an information session with members of the public. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? All in favor? Aye. Okay, just to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded, and so anything that you say may be used against you. Not really, but just remember that anything that you do say would be preserved on the record. What we'd like to do this morning, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for coming, taking some time out of your Saturday morning, is to really have a discussion about the pros and cons of the Town Council Study Committee's proposal to the town to convert to a different form of government, the Town Council Town Manager. What I'd like to do is hopefully take 5 or 10 minutes, run through our PowerPoint presentation that you see behind me, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, sort of set the stage. And then we're going to open it up for any questions or comments from the audience, both here in person as well as the folks that we may have on Zoom. And we're willing to answer questions and discuss this as long as people want to do it. So, with no further ado, we could turn to page, are you driving, Jeff?
I'm driving.
Okay. Some of you may have seen this presentation. We've been using it over the last several months to talk to various groups around the island. So we're trying to talk a little bit about our committee, the forms of government in the state, open meeting and what's good and or bad about it, town council, town manager, what are its characteristics and benefits, and then touch some of the new slides at the end are the fact that we've completed a draft charter. There's some key elements that we wanted to make sure the public was aware of. So page 3, the Town Council Study Committee was formed in response to an article at the 2023 town meeting submitted by Curtis Barnes, who's one of our committee members. And the purpose of the article, which was approved by town meeting at that point, was to study the characteristics and the establishment of a town council form of government, and then ultimately to submit an article to a future town meeting that would enable town meeting to vote on moving that proposal forward. There are 9 voting members on the committee and 1 non-voting member, Donna Martino, who is a representative of the Association of Non-Voting Taxpayers, and a couple of alternates as well. Just in summary, we did spend a lot of time in the beginning of the beginning of our sessions looking at a variety of the 4 types of government in the state, but we did unanimously vote back in about June of last year to go forward with the original purpose of the committee, which was to submit a proposal for a town conversion to town council, town manager. Next page. Just a quick sense of the types. There are 4 forms of government in the state. Open town meeting, which is what Nantucket has today. Representative town meeting, which is a variation on open town meeting where elected voters have the voting power as opposed to the population as a whole. Town council, town manager, which we're proposing. And then city council, mayor, which is generally the largest communities in the state, Boston, Worcester, and so on. Open town meeting is part of Nantucket's history and culture. Thanks, Jeff. It is a form of direct democracy. Obviously, we're all familiar with it. People come together, voters come together once or twice a year to act as the legislative body of the town. Nantucket actually has a rather interestingly, is one of the better communities in terms of the number of participants that actually show up at our town meetings. We range sort of 5 to 15% of the population. That's actually relatively high over the last 20 years. Well, what's the issue and why did Curtis propose this article back in 2023? And what do we as the committee feel are some of the issues that lead us to believe that open town meetings should be replaced? Basically, we think that the island and the community has outgrown open town meeting. Town meetings occur once or twice a year, so getting things through that legislative body can be slow and cumbersome. Very often you may have to wait 6 or 7 months between meetings before you could actually have an issue dealt with. We also believe that it does not represent the voters of all of the voters of Nantucket very well. Generally, and you probably all know this, that the biggest town meeting we've had since I've been here on Nantucket has been about 12% of the population. That was actually last year. And that means that there are 88% of our voters, of the 10,000 voters on Nantucket, who either can't come, don't want to come, and aren't having their voices heard at town meeting. So I think we felt that open town meeting doesn't fully represent the voters of the island. Next page. Just a quick summary and comparison of open town meeting and town council, town manager. I think the biggest issues and the biggest things to note here are that open town meeting occur maybe 1 or 2 or 3 times a year, depending on what's facing the town, where a town council, town manager form of government generally meets twice a month, at least most of the communities, the 13 communities that are town council, town manager, meet generally twice a month. And I'll skip over some of the rest. So what do we think are some of the advantages of town council, town manager? Well, first of all, it's a representative form of democracy. It relies on a number of town councilors to act as the legislative body for our community. It's a continuous process throughout the year, although there are certain cycles, budgeting being probably the most obvious, that occurs once a year for a town council form. They are a legislative body that represents all of the constituents of the town, not just the 8 or 9 or 10% or 2 or 3% that remain towards the end of open town meeting. These folks, this body would represent all of the voters of Nantucket. Okay, where are we? The path. The process that would occur, at least we anticipate would occur in terms of how town council would become implemented. Number one, we're going to have non-binding votes at the town meeting on May 3rd, as well as a non-binding vote on the ballot several weeks after that. Those are, as I said, non-binding votes, and they're going to be an indication to our committee, the voters at large, the select board, as to where this might stand in people's and voters' minds. But our goal after that is to complete a report to the select board and compose an article for the special town meeting in the fall, assuming that occurs. If that article were to pass at that special town meeting or at a future town meeting, it basically becomes, in effect, a home rule petition that goes to the state. At the state level, they would deliberate it and presumably approve it, but that could take an unknown amount of time. It comes back to the island, it would go on the ballot again, has to pass that ballot again, and if it does pass the ballot after coming back from the state, it would probably be another year before it could actually be implemented.
So just to add to that quickly, one of the sections of the draft charter specifically covers that transition period where post-vote to full transition to the town council, how that works, where there's essentially the select board and council are going to exist at the same time and slowly transition in and out of there through, one fiscal year into the start of the next. But again, there's a specific section of the charter that covers that transition.
Just to put it in context, if everything went perfectly and we did actually pass at the special town meeting in November, it would probably be the first half of 2027 before this could actually go into effect. So there's still some time, probably 2 or 3 years post a vote of an article at town meeting before this could actually be implemented. I'd like to just touch briefly on a couple of characteristics of the draft charter that we've virtually completed. Some of the characteristics of the town council itself, appointed and elected positions, and resident participation opportunities. So what we've built into this draft charter is a town council that would have 9 elected councilors on rolling 3-year terms. One councilor would be elected as the president of the council, and probably one of the more one of the, I guess, the boldest moves we're proposing is a rather dramatic stipend for members of this town council, a $40,000 base stipend with a $50,000 stipend to the individual that gets elected as president. We already have a fairly strong town manager, and the town manager in a town council form of government does basically act as the executive branch of government, and I don't think, and our committee doesn't feel, that this represents any great differences in terms of the way Nantucket operates today.
Can I add something to this really quickly? Because it's come up a lot. So those 9 councilors are elected at large, and we discussed at great length whether or not we should be looking into, precincts or districts. And there's a special act on the books already that allows Nantucket to not have precincts. But there are some rules around precincting with minimum size. Precincts need to be fairly equal in size. You can't have one precinct that's, the minimum 400 and then a precinct that's 4,000. And when we talked about it a lot, it was, originally some of the discussion centered around whether there should be representatives kind of, unique area of the island by unique area of the island. So there'd be Mattakit or Wisconsin and Tom Nevers and how that was going to look. But the Collins Center took a look at it for a little bit. I know some of us looked at it independently. Those geographic areas got really kind of crazy to make those precincts balanced. And I think that the group felt that it was most efficient to keep it as an at-large availability.
We also found out recently that Nantucket actually has an exemptive, relief from the state. It was set up back in 2001. And we're not required to have political precincts for any sort of reason. So again, as Jeff summarized, we're basically proposing that these would be all of these councilors would be at large. Next slide. Basically, the point of this slide is one of our strategies in all of our meetings was to try to leave the administrative and organizational characteristics of the town as much as possible in place. And so if you read through the draft charter, basically bodies that are appointed bodies today remain appointed bodies in a town council future, if you will. Elected bodies remain elected bodies. We felt that as much as we could, we wanted to sort of lift out, if you will, the select board and as the part of the executive form of government, lift out town meeting and replace it with town council. And then the last slide, we just wanted to touch on, we've had many questions from people about, well, if we go to town council, how do I have impact? How might we affect the outcome or the debate in issues that come before the town council? And there's eight sections here summarized on this slide. Basically, there are more possibilities for citizens and groups of citizens to petition the town council in terms of getting things on the agenda, opposing things that happen and votes that happen that they don't feel are appropriate or that the town didn't really reflect the will of the voters of the town. It's quite a long list and quite a complicated section, but there are, as this slide lists, quite a few steps that people could take if they didn't feel the town council was responsive to what the town wanted, up into including recalling members from the town council.
To add to that briefly too, it's also important to note that the town council is still subject to Massachusetts open meeting law requirements. So all of their meetings need to be publicly posted 48 hours in advance. Public meetings are obviously open to the public, and they can set their policies and procedures for there, whether there's just general public comment that doesn't require any sort of petitioning or filing. But they still have to meet those open requirements for meetings.
And with that, I think I've chatted on long enough. What I'd like to do is open the meeting to any questions that any of you have here in the audience. I would ask that you come up to the microphone, identify yourself, ask away, and we'll try to alternate. I don't know if we're going to have any questions on Zoom, but we'll kind of go back and forth as best we can. So,
Oh, geez. Laura brought her
welcome
computer
and
this time.
fire away.
Good morning, Laura Ramo. Could you do you have the draft charter?
If you give me a couple minutes, I certainly can.
That'd be great. I'd love to go to section 8. What's that? No, I just want to, working with the public as we do, I really want people to understand how this will change the way they petition the town council as opposed to doing a petition for open town meeting, because it's significant. And I'd also like to ask what the thoughts were behind the benchmarks for each petition, because they are significantly different than what we currently require of our residents who are drafting articles for town meeting.
Let me try something different.
Like maybe if we could walk through, so, we have 30, roughly 26 to low 30 citizen articles, and that is a lot. I mean, lots of towns don't get any. Nantucket, but Nantucket being different in the fact that most of those are sewer changes, zoning changes. I mean, it's not fluff that people are coming with. So I'm just curious why it looked like what the basis was going to be was the lowest number of signatures that you would have to have certified were 100. And it went all the way up to 2,000. And that was like, I think, for the veto or something like that. But I'm like, where and why? And let's talk about that.
Sure. Do you want me to kind of
You want
drive
to
through
go
this?
for it? I mean, I have some thoughts too, but go ahead.
Sure. So I'll try to do a real high-level run-through of this just for folks to see since it's up on the screen. So the first option that's here that the committee selected is this open meeting of the voters. This is essentially upon request of 200 voters, you can call what's kind of like a pseudo town meeting where you can get people together. The council doesn't take action at that meeting. Really, any issue can be discussed. It can be on a specific issue. The council also has the ability to call these at any point, but it's more of an open discussion of the town that obviously may lead to future action, but it's just to get kind of an issue discussed and on the table for people to look at. So I'll go as quickly as I can here, but the second one is this free petition section. So this first one, a resident petition, is anyone can file a request for an issue to be discussed by the council. The council can then take that under advisement and choose to discuss it or not, but people certainly have the ability to file that request. There is the next one, this group petition, where it requires action by the commission. And this requires 100 voters to certify it, but you can essentially request a specific action of the council. You can say that you guys need to take an action to do X, Y, or Z. Those are all through our public hearings. I would say that's fairly equivalent to a citizen warrant article because you're requesting a specific action. But I would also say there are a lot of citizen warrant articles that aren't requesting a specific action. They may be requesting kind of a non-binding issue. I would say that would fall, if you were going to request that a little bit differently, you may be looking at that as more of like the free petition resident position, as opposed to the specific action taken by the group petition.
So 100, the group petition requires 100 voters certified as opposed to 10, And then on top of that, 10 petitioners with an affidavit saying, we are the folks that are sponsoring this, right?
Correct.
I believe that's what it says.
Yes.
But then also what I wanted to check on was, how is the public notified that this article will be discussed on council? What I read is it looks like they post it online or we post it on the board in town hall, as opposed to open town meeting. The warrant and agenda is published in the newspaper in advance of any FinCom
So,
motions.
so
There's no newspaper notifying people that this article is going to be discussed and potentially voted on, right?
Not, so this is still a public hearing, right? So there are rules around public hearings, right? There's a difference, and I know this is getting into like really nerdy government nuance here, but
Well, no, I want people
there,
to
there
understand
are,
what,
there's a difference between a public meeting where you post agenda items and those get posted through the clerk and are available through, you know, like the bulletin board outside or online postings. And that enables discussion to be had. Public hearings have advertisement requirements. Sometimes they vary based upon the type of public hearing. Sometimes public hearings require, you know, advertisement in the newspaper 10 days
14 days.
prior, or 14 days, or
Yeah.
21 days, or 2 times in 21 days. It can vary depending upon issue to issue, but that's a big distinction between public hearings and public meetings. So essentially, with this group petition, you're requesting a public hearing. So it would have to meet those advertising requirements.
okay,
So there would have to be some level of advertising that goes with that hearing.
okay.
I also, isn't there an issue, I think, with, citizen requests for zoning changes, sewer changes? I'm not sure, and again, this is an interesting question because I don't think we've dug into this sort of how this works, but I think that for, a sewer issue decision, or certainly something that would have to go to the planning board, I want a zoning change on my lot, that petition would go to the town council, who would refer it to the planning board. The planning board would go through its cycle of however many days it takes before it would ultimately come back with a recommendation to the town council. So I'm not sure that all of this is, sort of completely analogous to articles that would be submitted for our open town meeting, sort of the regular day-to-day business of, I want to subdivide my lot, or I want to do this or that. Would go, sort of to the town council, referred to the planning board, ultimately come back after X numbers of days, because there's a certain number that, they have to act on it and
Right,
so on.
yep. So I'm just trying to understand how this process would change for our residents who are active in our local government. What steps do they now potentially need to take in order to do like a yard sale, the acquisition and conveyance, or to do a sewer change? Like, that's what I want to understand. And I really did want to understand why we're so significantly increasing the number of signature requirements in order for them to do. And maybe I misunderstand that.
Well, and again, I may not have this 100% right myself, since haven't thought through all these possibilities, but I don't think things like a zoning change require 100 signatures. I think that falls under the free petition, where you submit something to the town council, they say, oh, this is a zoning change, we send it back to the planning board or the whatever, so, and then it comes back, back through a regular process for the final vote by the town council.
Because those are the majority of the citizen warrant articles. And then we have things like, currently the STR debacle or debate, those are zoning. And so I can see those are going to require signatures or bylaw changes. But again, instead of 10 signatures, we're requiring 100 or 200.
Yeah, no, and I think we talked about that, and I felt that, I think the feeling of the committee was there was certainly enough flexibility in the lower level, if you will, or the initial level of petitioning the town council. The higher levels of signatures were added in because you didn't want to have, it had to be something that people really felt strongly about. And if you really, felt strongly enough to get 100 signatures or 200 signatures, it's doable. But, 20 signatures or whatever it is today is kind of low.
10.
10's even lower.
Yeah, I do think 10's lower, but I just feel like the message that it sends is,
Well, but I would also say, the other positive to all this is, don't forget that this happens continuously. So this, right now, these things sort of pile up, and you get to town meeting, and they get dealt with in an open session with people who are aware of what the issues are and people who aren't aware of what the issues are. Whereas one of the characteristics of town council that, again, speaking for myself, is you're going to have 9 individuals who are up to speed on what's going on in the town, who are, have expertise about certain issues, and you're going to be able to, as the petitioner, you're going to know who these folks are. So if you want to go talk to Joe Blow and say, this is why I want to change my zoning
Right,
or
you've
whatever,
got 9 people
you're going to
to
have 9
focus
people.
on.
Those are the only people you have to go to, as opposed to trying to convince 1,000 people,
668.
whatever.
Can I just add?
Yeah,
I
please.
don't, this is really a backstop measure. I don't, not that people couldn't use it all the time, they could, they probably won't. If you want to change zoning, or you wanted to, even if you want to change the car rental bylaw, let's say, and you're going to talk to the you're going to talk to the planning board, and you're going to talk to the town council first and try to work it through them. If they're like, no, 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 and they're not listening to you, and you think that you have more people that you need to help you, then you're probably going to send some letters. And if they continue not to listen, or, you know, you're going to come to public comment and make comments about it if you don't think they're listening. This is more
So
trying to.
ideally, you want it, the town council on your side, so you don't have to do a petition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So petition, yeah, Joe's right. It's really not replacing a citizen warrant article, because in the end, you still can't force them to vote on it. So you're just forcing them to talk about it, right? You can't, or you can't force them to vote in a way that's, that you want them to. They're the only ones that have the force of law for passing a bylaw.
I would also say too, right, these are, you know, entry-level citizen participation measures. This doesn't preclude the council from establishing, you know, workflow-specific procedures or adopting legislation that governs things specifically, right? If the council wanted to come forward and adopt legislation that said, to petition to enter the sewer district, you need to follow this procedure, and you need to get 3 signatures from other citizens or 10 signatures. They have the ability to create that legislation through, you know, a regular public hearing process. I mean, they could still do that for measures that are high volume requests, right? There are independent ways for them to set this up. This is a guaranteed way for citizens to always be able to get on the agenda for issues that are important to them. That's not necessarily I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, an established regulatory way, right? So there's already kind of paths for zoning, for sewer districts, for other things. That this is I have something that's outside of normal operations and things that are there. This is how I can bring that conversation to the table. If there's a established workflow for something that's a common practice, that's something they can certainly create legislation around.
Okay. I have more questions, but I want other people.
And I'll say too, well, someone else is coming up. Oh, we do have some hands online. Well, allowing Deborah Nicholson is first. Are you there, Deborah? Just need to unmute and you can ask your question. Deborah, if you're trying to speak, we still can't hear you. You still need to unmute, please. All right, we'll move on. I'll put Scott Wilson was also up with a hand. Scott, please unmute and ask your question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Joe and everybody. I'm speaking in my personal capacity, of course. On the provisions about redress, that citizens redress, those provisions I understand are common across all the charters of all the town council governed cities in the state. Do you know if there's any statistics about how often those provisions have been used?
Ooh. I do not. I don't know anybody else remember. I can't remember any comments from the Collins Center. Scott, that's something we can certainly find out. This is more opinion, not fact. I mean, my sense when we went through these sessions and these sections of Section 8 and discussed each of them, I didn't get the impression they were used very often, if at all, especially when you go up to the, the recall and
Right.
they're pretty draconian. So I don't think that they've been used, but you're quite right that the whole draft charter itself, but certainly this section, represents kind of current best practices across the state. The Collins Center, used templates that they had to basically create this document. But I can check into that, go back to the Collins Center and find out whether or not any of these particular avenues have been used before.
Right. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So in the context of the finance committee, or pardon me, the planning committee and the zoning change hypothetical, is it correct that the planning board doesn't have any sort of final authority over any zoning change? That everything it decides is really a recommendation that goes up to the councilors for final approval?
That's correct. Right?
Yeah. You still have a planning board, and the planning board would work on like the things that they work on all the time, which are citizens asking for changes and A&R subdivisions and special permits. We have it in our draft charter that the planning board is still elected. I would like to see that change personally, because I think they could go to more of an appointed body, because you're merging the planning board technically with the select board to form a town council. The town council is not a select board anymore because they handle all the actual laws. But they would get recommendations from a planning board, and agenda items, I think, would bubble up from a planning board to the town council. And so, yes, a planning board would not be passing a zoning bylaw, but they would, I'm sure, make recommendations.
And the only role of the town manager in that whole process is simply execution?
I'm not sure I would drop out only, but I think it's, the town manager is, under our current form of government, Libby is considered a quote unquote strong town manager. She has a lot of authority and a lot of administrative control. Under the town council form, the town manager picks up a few more, if you will, tasks in terms of appointment authority, most of which with the approval of the town council. So I think, yes, Scott, I mean, in terms of executing any decision, a zoning law, whatever bylaw, any other kind of bylaw, the town manager is the ultimate authority and the ultimate, head of the executive part of government.
But her only role in the approval process would be advisory. She herself wouldn't have particular authority to approve things.
I mean, yeah, she doesn't have a vote, but I mean, again, we all know that, in terms of our current administrative structure of our government, I mean, most of the people who do the work and most of the people who provide expertise and input tend to work for the town manager.
I mean, just to really kind of put a bow on that question, I think the town manager's only role in a zoning change would be to make sure that the map was updated after a decision was made. I mean,
The math of the map.
the map, the zoning, like the zoning map was updated to show the zones correctly and that they were enforced correctly, but they wouldn't be involved with any of the legislative process of that.
So I guess you don't really see a whole lot of change with respect to the town manager's role.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest, yeah, I know, I'm sorry, Brooke. Probably the principal enhancement or expansion of the town manager's duties is around appointments. There are just more positions that the town manager would be responsible for making the appointment decision on, some of which are backstopped by either approval or lack of disapproval on the town council.
And
Scott, I'm gonna ask you to
okay.
we can certainly go back around, but we got some folks here want to ask some questions. And Brooke, fire away.
Brooke Moore, couple of things. I would appreciate knowing from the Collins Center, I'm sure you don't have the answer today, but was there a change in voter participation levels in communities that went from town meeting to town council, as in how many people used to show up at town meeting and how many people show up at the election after the conversion? Because one of the reasons that we argue for this change is increased participation. I'm curious if that bears out in voter participation in electing town councilors. That would be my first question. As far as the town manager's role in the select board, I can tell you from a little bit of experience that one of the things that the current select board does is strategic policy making. So I'm not sure where the prioritization shifts between the select board and town council and the town manager in that regard. So we work very closely as a board with the town manager in terms of establishing administrative priorities as co-executors. We're together, the executive branch now. So what is the distinction between a town council in terms of strategic policy versus a select board? It's just a question. I don't know how that plays out. And does then the town manager have more independence in prioritization and policy in administration? And there was another thought I had, and I can't remember what it was, but if I remember, I'll come up.
Thanks.
I know what it was. The zoning thing really doesn't change anything. It's just the legislature changes.
Right.
The process becomes the same. The planning board is not able to change the zoning bylaw now, nor would it under this. Who changes ultimately the zoning bylaw is town council or open town meeting, one or the other. So that role of the town manager and the planning board in that process really doesn't change.
No, and that's, as I think I said earlier, that's been our philosophy all along. It's like, let's try not to make any changes in terms of how the machine works, if you will, how the sausage gets made. But the final legislative decision, instead of being town meeting, ends up being the town council. Now, I'm sure that there are things that won't quite work the same, but we'll play that out. And actually, Brooke, if I don't mind my editorializing, on the issue of strategic planning, which has been a focus of the select board, and that's a great point. This draft charter is pretty much at the point where we want to give it to Libby and the select board and KP Law, because there are probably nits and gnats that need to be discussed, and maybe one of them is, okay, what happens to the whole strategic planning function, and how might you resource that going forward? So,
In case I'm hogging time, the town council's clerk, is that a new position?
yes,
I'm assuming it's not the same as the town
it's
clerk.
not the same as the town clerk.
I asked that for you, Laura.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to certify all those, Laura.
So if I can really quickly, just kind of my thoughts on the, strategic policy making. I think under this form, it becomes a very interactive process between the town manager and the town council, as the town manager is going to have to provide a yearly budget for approval from the town council. And I think, there's always goals and metrics that are going to be set or priorities that are going to be established through legislation, where there's going to have to be a bit of back and forth about what some of those strategies are and, what some of the long-term goals are. And I think that's going to have to be a kind of a public process between the legislative and executive to establish those.
Yeah, if I could just put a finer point on that, that's going to be up to the elected body and who's elected. Are you somebody that's a little bit like, hey, we like our town manager and we respect them to take the lead on this, or we want to take the lead on this? I think, whereas now, I think you've got a great working relationship, and I would hope that would continue. But I think with a 9-person board, then the town manager's got 9 people to work with instead of just 5. So the dynamic will be different.
Lucy?
Hi, Lucy Haher. I'm going next because all my questions are being asked, so I've only got a few left. So how often will the town council, the proposed town council form of government meet?
So by charter, they're required to meet a minimum of 12 times a year. They're required to meet monthly. They can certainly meet as often as they so choose, or as often as requested, as long as they meet that 48-hour posting requirement.
Right. And then these meetings probably will be 4 or 5 hours or something, so like in the big scheme of things, like if you wanted to come to open town meeting, you've got like 20 hours, but if you're gonna try and keep up with these meetings every month, you have to be more ahead of the game. I wanted to ask what Brooke asked as well, will people be more engaged or disengaged? But could you walk me through, like, you know, for instance, like our island home, how would that be, how would that be handled under a town council?
That's a good question. Do you want to take that?
Bo, you want to go first?
It would be more or less handled the same way it is now, with the executive presenting the plan to the town council. And then everything that passes between the town council or the executive, town manager, and the legislative would be passed through as legislation. So here's the plan. Do you approve it? Yes or no? And the town council come back with a negotiation. And you would either get approved or not approved by town council.
By town council, so it would be 9 people.
So,
And
I
then
mean,
people,
there would be the issue of financing. I mean, you know, something like Our Island Home, the financing side of the whole project is another, you know, something that comes from town administration, but it's going to be, how do you plan the financing? It will have to ultimately go to the ballot, you know, more likely than not, something that large would have funding issues. How are you going to raise the money? So you'd have a vote of the town council in terms of approving the project, and I assume there would be weeks, if not months, of public hearings. I mean, it's a huge, we all know, it's a huge project facing the town, but a project that big, there would be months of hearings and process before a final decision, and it would still have to go onto the ballot to have the financing approved by the voters.
And I would add to that, there's a potential for a Ways and Means Advisory Committee to be set up by the town council, which would advise them on financial wherewithal of the town and the way we're going to pay for it, so.
right.
The charter has a capital committee too, so they would they would continue to exist. The finance committee won't exist anymore, but.
I would also throw in that I think I would be hopeful that the council would take an issue like that, right, in Island Home, that there's a lot of impact and citizen discussion, that would be a really excellent opportunity for them to engage in an open meeting of the voters without the petition to come in for the 200 to say, we're going to have an open discussion, right? We're going to have it at the auditorium. We're going to invite everyone to come. It's going to be on this date and this time. And we want to hear what everyone has to say about it to put it into our process. If people feel like that hasn't happened, they can certainly petition on their own. And then if people feel that it's a decision that's been wrong, there are other, you know, citizen participation measures to overturn a decision, or again, they can voice their, if it's something that requires a vote at the ballot for funding, the citizens can certainly voice their, you know, displeasure with the decision in that regards too, and ultimately have the final say.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lucy.
I'd like to just point out too that Barnstable has had, first of all, to go back to Laura's thing, so all the ways of citizen participation, we included all of them. Most towns don't include all of the ways. And so, I mean, you're concerned, and probably rightfully so, and we should probably take your opinion on it, because you would know best on the limits, so to speak. But we did include all the ways to participate. Maybe we haven't hit the right target as far as like the actual threshold. But yeah, what were we talking about? I forgot. Anyway.
All right. John?
John
Fire away.
Phones. So are you required on any issue to have it at the auditorium, to have a type of open town meeting thing? Are you required?
Sorry, thank you for jogging my memory. No.
No.
And I was going to say, Barnstable has had town meetings, so they have this in their charter, in
Right.
their town council. And one was actually very fascinating. They had a transfer station that goes in from the wind farms that makes the jump on their shores, and they had to figure out where to put it.
Yep.
And this is a very hot button issue for the town. So they had a town meeting, they called a town meeting, and each, this was just a single issue, but everybody lined up in the auditorium, did their 4-minute speech, and the town council just listened, and that was the way it was structured. That's the same thing we're proposing.
So but you're required for every issue for that, and every decision?
No, and you
No.
can call it as a citizen, you need the amount of signatures, 200. Yeah,
200 people have to sign,
exactly.
yeah.
Again, this is, going back to Laura's. Yeah.
Right. And then if the planning board's appointed by you guys,
It's still elected.
it's still elected at this point, but if you're trying to move it to appointed.
No, we're really,
That's what Barnstable does, if they're appointed.
They're appointed.
yeah.
But
There
the other
are,
night you said appointed. Yeah, you'd like to see him appointed.
I think it's a little redundant to vote to have elected officials not carrying the force of. It seems redundant to me to ask people to run for office for something where they don't have the force of law, they don't have that kind of influence. So it's hard to recruit people to run for office here, right? So we don't want to have too many elected, I don't want to say we don't want more elected officials, I think that would be a good thing, but we don't need a redundant post like that in my personal view. So that's something that the select board and town council would probably work out when they went through the draft. If people wanted to keep them elected, they could, but I would like to see the existing planning board members run for town council is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you said, yeah.
Because we want land use experts on that council. We do.
I'll just make it super clear, though. Under the draft charter currently, the draft that was on the screen or is sitting right here, the planning board is still listed as an elected board.
They are.
And they're just going to make recommendations to the council, but the council makes the final decision on zoning.
Yes, sir.
which is what happens now. Town meeting makes the final decision.
Yes, so nothing's changing there.
Right. Other than, well, the body changes,
The only
but
issue is
yes.
here is something could change a lot faster if you could meet every 2 days than once a year.
There's still public hearing requirements that come in for advertising and things. I don't think you would have the legal ability to file a zoning petition, somehow get a planning board meeting for a recommendation in 48 hours, and then 48 hours after that, get that into town council to try to sneak something through. I don't think that would legally be possible to do.
By a minimum a month, you could do something in a month, maybe.
If you met all of the advertising requirements correctly, then yes, you could. Well, I mean, this is something I have to deal with all the time, right? For applications for regulatory boards. So in theory, you could, right? Like if you apply to the Conservation Commission, right? This is more my wheelhouse for timing. You, in theory, could get a decision, within, 21 to 30 days of application. That's about as fast as you could go. And that's a single point application. If you have to add another point in there, I would think you would be adding on at least another 21 to 30 days at a minimum to do. And I don't think that you could do it any faster and meet all of those requirements. But again, a lot of those requirements are set through state law for advertising. Some of those require, notice to abutters, and those abutters can range in, from 100 feet of the property to 300 feet of the property, depending on what it is. It can really vary pretty greatly from spot to spot for what that would be, but I don't think you could ever do anything faster than, 30 days, certainly, just to meet all those requirements.
That would just be the one instance of speed is not good in government there, I would think. So,
Well,
it
also,
could go
that's-
away and come back and something's changed next year.
it's also, the town council, it's still 2/3 vote. It's a 9-person board, so
Right.
there is a good, strong threshold there. And also, I think that my assumption was that they're going to have their own rhythm and a calendar the way they do now. So you're going to are they going to address zoning every month? I don't know, but maybe. But are they going to, if they meet every week, are they going to address it every week? Probably not. They're going to have a meeting for budget issues, and then, I don't think
they're going to come up with like a calendar that they're happy with so that they kind of lay out what big issues they're trying to tackle throughout the year. So you'll probably know like, oh, we're going to do zoning in February and May with this council, or, you know.
Yeah, we hope.
So also just for my 2
Thank you,
cents.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
No,
Sam.
For my 2 cents on it a little bit, I think this really touches on one of the big differences between open town meeting and town council. And I apologize for those who were here last time and to the panel, because they hear me talk about this a lot. But one of the major differences is that town council is a deliberative process. Is you can have the discussion, you can have the public hearing, and you can continue the discussion. You can say, we don't have enough information to make a decision tonight. We're going to carry it forward, and we're going to postpone it for 30 days to get that information. Or we don't have the expertise needed. We need to go find it, have that person come in and inform us on, some of the impacts or the changes that are going to be made. We're going to postpone and move our decision point to a different date and time. Again, those all still require, public meeting components and things that are there. With the legislative branch being open town meeting, you really have more of a approval function at town meeting where everything is there. The decision point is that day. And if there's not enough information to make that decision, you're waiting a year to bring that whole issue back. There's no, we're going to continue this discussion for 2 weeks and bring town meeting back together in 2 weeks to have this with more information. It's going to either be, a take no action or you could even table something at town meeting, I guess. But it's a very fixed point in time for a decision to be made. It's a yes or it's a no. And if more information is needed, you simply can't get it to bring back to that group. And I think, in my personal opinion, that's a real strength of town council, is to say, we want to make the best decisions we can with the best information. Let's continually work to go get it until we're feeling comfortable as a council to make that decision.
Well, I would say that in our present form, we have study committees, and there's a huge amount of work that goes on to prepare for town meeting. So I would say that we do have that process now.
This is true, but technically it's not, you're not negotiating directly with the legislature when you do that. And that's why this is more an iterative sort of process. You have the two bodies that are going to make this decision working together.
Oh, I did want to say about the town meeting, though, sorry. The committee thought it was very important because Nantucket's had a town meeting for, I don't know, is it 354 years? I think this might be I think that's the number. And we thought it was important in a transition, should this get voted on, to keep that forum and that function, even though it's not the legislative body anymore. And I think we talked about putting it in the charter, that we would have, there is the possibility that we could put in a town meeting so that people could know that it was going to happen as a way to have the conversation in the town. Didn't we discuss that? I remember we did. Well, right, I think it's in the charter that we can do it, but I think the Collins Center, because I remember talking about this and asking if it was something we could actually put in the charter so that people knew that it was there as a placeholder for a community conversation, which is, I think, one of the biggest changes of going to this form of government, is that people feel that they would lose that community conversation, which is very important for Nantucket.
Can I just add something to that, though? And it would be nice for everyone to get together, and I would hope that a council will actually call town meetings from time to time, especially for big issues. But really, to me, the calendar is what's changing. So you're not just going to show up one day or 2 days a year to talk about or listen to people talk about specific pieces of legislation. You're going to need to pay attention to every meeting to see what they're doing on the agenda. So that's why I would personally hope they don't meet every week, because they shouldn't put that on the public like that. I think that's why they have one long meeting. It gives you a chance to break instead of showing up every week, but that will be up to them to decide their schedule. but it will force people to pay attention more often. And they'll say, oh, they're doing zoning this month. I need to look and see what they're considering, or, you know.
Laura Ramo. Talking about deliberation, you've got 9 people deliberating in a town council, we've got 1,000 plus, and that is a challenge. And the other challenge is educating those 1,000 versus educating 9. Right now, I would like to see us do a better job at providing some structure for our resident voters as to where to find this information, like the CAPCOM, the FinCom, all those meetings leading up to the printing of that warrant article have great information for people to see the deliberation that we put in the hands of our appointed officials. And I put a lot of faith in the work that you guys do on FinCom and CAPCOM. And I think if our residents could see that work from the summer up to December, seeing the department heads proposing these, significant capital programs, and the deliberation that goes up to that point to making that article is an important part of their process of deliberation, so that they come to the meeting knowing all that.
I was just going to give feedback on that. I mean, one example on CAPCOM and FinCom, we don't have a ton of public participation. On CAPCOM, I can't think of a single person in the public who came at the moment and
Right, but providing that
observed or
resource
watched.
to review it, because everybody works multiple jobs, but
Oh,
giving
yeah.
them, where is that information, pointing it out? Like I've said, like a syllabus. You go into a class in college and you're given, this is what you need to learn, and this is where it is. This is a big test or a big vote, and people should be provided with kind of where to find the information. And that, I would like to work on doing that better. But having a 9-person council, it's fewer people to have to educate, which is great. And it's also, it gives people, easier access to just 9 people when discussing, a hot topic. Anyway, that was one thing. I wanted to ask about the 20% on, John had pointed out the other day. So 20% voter turnout at a town election when, and I think it's only applicable to when a citizen
wants to
forward-
recall something.
Yeah, and if it goes, a citizen goes to the town council for a petition of some sort, and then that item has to go to the ballot, to the voters to decide. That's the only time you're requiring a benchmark of 20%. And so I guess I'm wondering, why are we doing that? Why are we holding that to a higher standard than a regular town election?
That's a state requirement.
To make it hard. I mean,
I know, but I don't think we should be trying to make it hard for our residents to engage in,
Well,
why
except that-
is it harder? Why is it harder? Why should it be harder for us? If the council has passed it, why should we have a higher bar? Like if you pass an appropriation for budget for a capital program or something, we're not saying, okay, now I want 20% turnout, or we're not building that island home,
Well, I'll take one crack at it because I like the electoral stuff.
Fire away.
You have to pay attention to who you're electing. I mean, that really is the most important thing, right? I mean, and so if you don't like them or you don't think they're doing a good job, then find somebody else to run. I think it's kind of making it easier on you actually, because you're gonna look at these I think I'm gonna look at the candidates and know where they stand on issues. It's not exactly like that on select board now. It's maybe become a little bit more like that, but a little less. I think this is gonna be, you might become more policy focused with who is running and them having a platform to run on.
I'm looking at section 8.3G.
Can you put it up,
Just-
Jeff?
Is it G? No, that's the 2,000 voters required for a signature. John, do you remember where it was?
I think it's 8.4.
Was that the veto?
Required voter participation? Yeah, and it says for any,
And then 20%.
well,
And then the other day you were saying, oh, you guys have to wait a whole year to go to town meeting to change something. It's a whole year anyway here, because then you have to get the 200 signatures and you got to wait to get it on a ballot. It's still a year to change something that gets passed. It's not right.
well, I think one thing we should do is, we need to answer Brooke's question about how often do any of these things ever actually get to this point? Because these are fairly draconian situations where voters really want to change something. I'm not sure that that happens all that often, but maybe it does. And then I guess my reaction to the 20% of the registered voter is, we generally have 2,000 or 3,000 people participate in an election. So it doesn't say you have to win by 20%. You have to get 20% of the voters participate. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
And
I-
just
I-
real quickly, and sorry to interrupt, Laura, this is also specific to the overturning a decision of the council. This isn't, right, if the council passes something to spend, right, if they pass funding to, build the new island home, and that goes to the ballot, and it's just part of normal funding and normal, budget cycles, it doesn't require a 20% turnout for that to be affected. That 20% turnout is very specific to having gone through the process to overturn a decision of the commission.
We don't have a
sorry, not the
quorum
commission,
for
of
the
the council.
open town meeting now.
What's that?
There's no quorum for an open town meeting. So we're setting a quorum for a town election essentially. But
Well, I would also say there's also no recourse to a decision made by town meeting. There's no ability for citizens to overturn an opportunity from a decision made at town meeting,
okay.
outside of filing for an additional town meeting. You can't band together and try to work with the legislature that currently exists. So there's always like a yin and a yang, right? There's a trade-off to all of these.
Absolutely. I think both have pluses, and I can see pluses for town council and open town meeting. So the functions for people to go and address an issue, the section 8 or whatever, that we keep referring to as draconian, don't include fluff. Give them legitimate tools that are attainable and don't require extraordinary means to do this. I mean, there should be some effort, but if we're just throwing in stuff to make it look like, oh, well, we have these 10 things that you can use, if you find fault or concern, not fault or concern or question, use real tools. Don't put in 10 just because it looks good that we have 10 for our citizens. If there's only 3 good ones, then do 3 good ones. But, just something more to think of.
okay, I appreciate your comment. I'm not sure I agree with you. I mean, I think that these, certainly the 6th, 7th, and 8th ones are situations that really do require a draconian amount of effort on the people who oppose the decision that was made. And so I think you should make it hard. I mean, if the town council has gone through its process and voted on whatever the issue, whether it's a big issue or a little issue, and citizens oppose that, well then, the 9 town councilors, they're voting on behalf of the 10,000 voters in the town.
Right.
And then the people who are in opposition are saying, we don't agree, we think you should have voted the other way. I think you should make it hard for those people to change it. Otherwise, otherwise, if it's too easy, you end up with chaos, right? I mean, people
Yeah.
are going to oppose everything.
Right,
And,
right.
So, again, I think this is a really interesting conversation because certainly in terms of writing this and composing this with the Collins Center, we haven't sat here and thought through every permutation that can happen, but.
Right, and I appreciate all the time that you've put into it. I really, really do. And I just wanted to understand what you were saying about that component, those components. So, I absolutely appreciate all the hours and hours of work that you're doing here. And there's a lot of debate to be had about what's included in a final
Yes,
draft.
agreed.
Yeah.
And I should say, and I think I said this earlier, this is going to go to the select board, to Libby, to the town council, town lawyers, and my guess is there will be, polishing of the details, but we'll see.
Well, and yes, the reason that we're having these meetings is to hear from people, and you're in a very good position to tell us these sorts of things. And so I think we would, I'm interested in going back to our consultants to just inquire about this, because I don't know what the answer is. And if we adjust it down and make it less odious to have access, what's the downside? And of course, we want to ask if they've studied this, as Brooke has asked, to see what the outcome was. So.
Hi, I'm Lucy Haher, and I just want to echo what Laura says. Thank you. God bless anybody who's on a committee, and I know you've been doing it a long time. And like all the committee members are, like, since you've been doing it since, is it November 2023 or so? Are you all, like, do you all feel, like, is there a vote that you all feel this is the best thing for Nantucket with all your research you've done?
Well, we spent, I don't know how many, it was a couple of months in the beginning, talking about the committee and why it was formed and all the different forms of government available to us. And the Collins Center really did a good job educating us about that. We went through a lot of material. And because of the way that the article was written, it was written for us to study a town council form. So ultimately, when we took our vote as a committee, we had to, the process for us was, we've informed ourselves about all the options, but our job is to actually study this one form. So our committee took a vote to decide if we can, as a committee, function to do that. And I think that there's a lot of different feeling on the, we're all different people, we have different opinions, and we're all learning as we go. We have, goodness knows, we know more than we did when we started. But our job as a committee is to put together a town council form for the voters to look at and vote on.
Okay.
Can I respond to that?
Sure, absolutely.
Yes, we feel like this is the way to go. I think first of all, 60% of the country uses this system. Like I said the other day, Massachusetts is weird. It's got these other two forms that virtually nobody uses. But it works for a small scale. So meaning that the select board system works at a scale that it's small. It needs a strong executive to provide organization and to move things along. But as the system grows and it scales up, you need these two powerful institutions. And that's what this is. It's the dual nature of strong executive, strong legislative.
Thank you. So you speak about getting 9 people who represent the island and who are educated and informed. How do you propose to do that? How can you guarantee something like that?
Well, I think two things. One, we've decided to go with a significantly higher stipend in terms of compensation. So hopefully the fact that individuals who presumably have another job are willing to take extra time out of their life for some financial compensation might generate more candidates. But I also think, we will find candidates. Interestingly, the Collins Center went through the last, I think it was 10 or 20 years of select board elections here on Nantucket. And we've always had 2 or 3 or 4 candidates for the 1 or 2 positions. I mean, it's not that they don't sort of bubble up, if you will. So, yeah, I know that, and Lucy, you've been in a lot of our meetings, we all worried about, are we really going to find enough candidates? Are they out there? I actually think if you, educate the public about this form of government, you're going to find people are going to be interested in participating.
Okay.
And guess what? You'll make a little more money now. You'll be compensated for the amount of work you do, which we certainly heard many comments from our select board member about the workload of this, of being a select board member.
Yeah, maybe we should just pay the select board members. So
That's certainly a
Another-
possibility.
That's something that could come out of this whole discussion. That's why we want people to talk about this and to
Right.
think about it. We do not have, in my view, we do not have good participation at town meeting. And by that, I'm not talking just about the people who show up. I'm talking about the same people talk over and over. We listen to the same handful of people, honestly, about the same things. And I really respect that they're there and sharing their views, but I don't leave feeling like I heard the full debate from the larger participants. And that's something that I wrestle with. Do I think town council is going to be a better system? It's just going to be different.
right, but at least you're hearing from a larger percentage of the voters at a town meeting than in a town council. So like
But-
in
but-
essence, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's funny you say that because I feel like when I'm at town meeting, the people who do stand up, they are participating all year. I think we see a lot of the same people and we kind of know or they've written letters to the editor, or they've made comments on social media, or they've come to select board meetings and spoken. So I do feel like they are, active participants. But yeah, Brooke should give her view on this, too, and so should Tom. I just don't know that, I like town meeting. I like it. I think it's really charming. And I like that we're all in the room together as a community. I feel like there's a lot of community connection with it. And I actually think that the outcomes from town meeting, a lot of them are quite good.
I mean, I do too, otherwise I wouldn't be up here asking these questions, but
Yeah.
I do, I like the community coming together. I like that our vote has some weight in it. So like. a
But
lot of
I
peop-
just want to make one point about the gap between the number of people who come to town meeting and the gap for the people who vote on the municipal ballot is quite big. And so that's kind of what triggered it for me, that we're getting over 2,000 people, over 2,200 people, 2,800 people to turn out at just the municipal ballot. I mean, we get twice as many people to turn out for the state and federal elections.
Right.
So there are people that want to participate who are not participating. That's kind of what I thought was interesting about putting the committee together and seeing if it's something people wanted to do.
Right. And thank you. So like in essence, when the 9 people, they can just come in and change the charter, right? They have that power to come in and change the charter and just make.
I don't think they can change the charter. I think that requires a vote.
You've got to have
But a vote on the 9 people,
No, I think that the town has to do that. It has to go to the ballot.
So, and,
They can change bylaws. I don't think they can change the charter.
okay. Okay. And then, everybody's like talks about like their vote. So our only vote we will have is to vote for the 9 representatives. But after that, on any of the issues, the public do not have a vote. We can go and talk at the public meetings that they have every 2 weeks, but we don't have a vote. I'm just.
You can speak at public meetings, you can go speak and petition the councilors
Right.
directly. You can write letter. I mean, there are certainly as
Right.
many ways to communicate your opinions as there are today, so.
Well, absolutely, but you just got that vote to vote for the 9 people.
There's a referendum too, so technically you can force a ballot vote.
All right.
Yes, which would be
Thanks,
a
Lucy.
big effort.
If I could just pull something out there of what Lucy was saying in the beginning. I think this for me is the biggest difference in the 2 forms of government, is that they're obviously the types of people who would be running for town council positions, they are running for the legislative body. So it's quite possible that they would be different types of people, or there would be more types of people. And, I think that's what you're trying to get at, Jill, that there would be more different types of people who would be available in those roles. And so it would expand the representation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be hopefully we're going to pull even more policy-minded people out who realize, oh gosh, we're governing
Yeah.
now, right? And so we need to really pay attention to this because we don't have town meeting anymore.
So
So it
that
will be different.
And that change is what drives the increase in representation. The fact that those 9 people are the legislative body, and who is going to attract to run for those roles, and how much attention we would need to pay to who we're electing, that does change and expand the representative.
That's what will change
Representative.
hugely.
Brooke, sorry, you've been patient.
No, that's all right. Spent a lot of time thinking about this through the whole process, and sort of, I've said often that one person's win or advantage to the change is perceived as a disadvantage to someone else, right? Depending on your perspective. I would say that the advantage of things moving along through the process more quickly than twice a year can be a good thing. It can also result in more wild policy or direction swings for town government. And the fact that, you know, a majority or 2/3 of 9 has to be persuaded of a decision is a different bar than, you know, that percentage of a room full of people. But in terms of people being able to participate, one of the things that appeals to me is that if you have a particular issue you're concerned about, you don't have to spend an entire day at town meeting. You will see it posted on an agenda of the town council, and you can participate as that issue makes its way through the decision-making process at town council. So in a way, it lowers the bar to some extent in terms of people being able to have their voices heard beyond their vote or who they elect, right? So if our island home were coming before the town council and that was your topic of concern, you would only need to show up when that was on the agenda and talk about it and try to convince the 9 town councilors of your position on that. So I think that it makes room for more participation on an item-by-item basis for people depending on what they're interested in, as opposed to the whole thing of town meeting. So that's sort of appealing to me, but I do think I worry a little bit about the town meeting is a governor on change, and whether you perceive that as a good thing or a bad thing really depends on what you want to see changed or what you don't want to see changed over time. So it's just an observation that people should consider as we think about making this transition.
I think one of the things that would be interesting, though, you're just triggering that for me, a new town council they can call a town meeting. They could do that every year if they wanted to and say, hey, now's your chance. We want to hear from you in this forum and discuss things in here. I mean, they can do that. They don't have to do that, but they might want to do that for a period of time as it transitions, because it would be a big difference for people.
Hold on one second. Do we have anybody else online no, okay, just want to make sure we weren't making one of them wait.
I think Bo had a comment too.
Okay. John, you got
So could you put that in your charter? To have the minimum meeting, you know, that's once a month, be a town meeting? Could you put that in the charter?
Well,
I don't know if we can.
it is.
It's in there as an
So,
option.
so 12 times a year, you'll have that.
Well, there,
No,
I mean,
no,
can I just
no.
1 second? I don't want to
Well,
sound.
everything's going up in price here. They're going to finally get more money, which I think the select board should get more money, without a doubt.
I don't want to sound really glib or rude by saying this. They are town meetings. They're all open to the public. Anyone can go. Every select board meeting is a town meeting, right?
Okay.
Anyone can go and participate. Really, the commonality between all of these forms of government and the governor on all of them are citizen participation. That's really what it comes down to, is how you engage your citizens to participate and how we make those educational connections, how we rely on those people to do it. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but the only difference between a select board meeting and, you know, an open town meeting that the council has is what room they're going to hold it in, right? If they want to hold it in the auditorium, they can hold it in the auditorium. If they want to hold it in here, they can hold it in here. But any citizen can come. And I think for me personally, the real strength of council, again, is that you don't have to be a voter. You can be a resident. You can be a citizen that's here. You can come and talk to the legislature and voice your opinion and share your thoughts and experiences with them and try to say, this is why I think this is the action you should be taking and why. And have that discussion with the legislature. And I would hope at the same time that, if you wanted to sit down with the town manager or a department head or other part of kind of that executive staff, you could sit down and have those same discussions with both branches of the government, where now that can be a little trickier. I often hear from folks that go to town meeting that they want to talk, but they don't want to get up in front of 1,000 people. That's a lot. That's
Yep.
a real high bar for people to do it and put themselves out there, right? Is how we engage people to participate and feel comfortable participating and educate them is really the key to whether it's open town meeting, representative town meeting, council manager, council mayor, active citizens are really the only thing that make those work.
So will you have a time requirement that how long you can speak? Is
That
that in
is-
the charter?
I would say that is not a charter level decision. That policies related to timers for speaking, I would say, are policy level decisions for any council or board or regulatory board to make based upon issues or workflow. I think putting that granular level into a charter is asking for problems myself.
I think it's now and in the state. And that's how the reason we have it at the select board meetings and at the town,
Can I
open town meetings.
just add to that? So typically it's 4 minutes. Barnstable, public comment can go from an hour to 2 or 3 hours, I've seen
Yeah.
in meetings. So there you go.
And then just back to some other things, maybe the same people always talk at the town meeting, but the other people are there, and maybe they don't want to stand up because it's, embarrassing or whatever, but maybe there's things get said, and they're there to vote too. So yes, you'd be able to get to talk, but you wouldn't be able to get a vote. So that's a big thing there. But the same people might talk.
Well,
And then,
you will have voted to elect the town councilors.
right, but they're rolling 3 years, so you have a
Well, that's a pretty
a
long
long
time.
time to all of a sudden rescind your vote, technically, right? So, and then the other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, but with a town council, you looked on as a city, and any bylaw you do pass goes right off to the state, and that gets passed. That doesn't get looked over like it's coming from an open town meeting. Is that true?
That is true. It is a city form of organization. We will still call ourselves the town of Nantucket, but it is a city, and you will get sort of instant,
Things, so any bylaw just gets accepted by the state because you're looked on as,
correct.
All right, so the trade-off is you lose your vote, but you gain organization. And what do I mean by that? Okay, let's take an example, a specific example. Paid family medical leave. This was an issue that was voted by the legislature. It was voted in favor, they passed it. The select board said no. The executive said no. And I'm sure they have their reasons. Personally, as an owner of a corporation, I don't like the state statute, but nonetheless, it was a no. Okay, what recourse does town meeting have, do the voters have, to get this legislation through? Because it takes negotiation to push it to the direction of execution. Do you have recourse? Do you have an oversight committee? Do you have legal counsel? Do you have the power to appoint? The legislature currently doesn't. Now, they could, if they were crafty enough, go through the operations budget and say, we're going to take this away until you approve this, or you get this executed. But currently, they don't take that organizational power that they're currently delegated, and they don't use it. So you gain the organization of a small group with legal representation, with a staff, meeting more frequently. So that's what you get.
Brooke?
Someone asked about charter changes. I do believe they have to go to the legislature regardless of the form of government, right? So the town council can't change the charter, right?
Correct.
Independently, it has to be approved. And then by home rule petition, and then, or by some,
You could have a charter commission, I think, right?
yeah. So that's a little more, it's a little more difficult than just the town council decides to throw it out and change it. The town meetings proposed in this are not legislatively binding, correct? They're information only.
Correct.
And I know maybe that's the language used, but it will be very confusing to people to continue to call it a town meeting because the perception, and I think John may have misunderstood that a little bit, why are we not having 12 town meetings a year, thinking that the people in the room would be voting and have legislative power? They will not. It's basically a public information session is what it is for the town council. And I think that needs to be, the use of that language, I think, could be very confusing with our history of what town meeting actually is. And that's just a thought in terms of the text.
But it would be an opportunity for the town council to hear what a large group of citizens is thinking. So
Understood, but
Yeah.
Barnstable had one around the wind farm thing, and then voted yes on the putting in that infrastructure. Now, people lost the election afterwards. That was the accountability, was some of those counselors who voted to put that infrastructure in were then voted out in the next election. But they were not obligated to follow overwhelming public opinion at one of those town meetings. So I just want that to be clear.
So
Correct.
just for point of clarity, and that's a good point from Brooke, is technically within the charter, it's not called a town meeting, it's called an open meeting of the voters.
I'm just thinking that this all raises the question of which form of government is going to provide, optimize, and then I'm starting to think, is it that we're persuading? Or is it the public is persuading? Are they educating the council members? Are they exchanging information between the council members and the voters who've elected them? Is the public body at that point representing ideas and opinions or changing customs? Are they helping in the conversation, whether it's biweekly or once a month, to flavor and color what the public is interested in? Is that how the town councilors are going to be influenced? Or is the public there to remind the town councilors what's important in our particular town? And this is all stuff that I'm still thinking about, and which form is going to best provide that, and which types of these meetings is going to best provide that.
One thing
sure.
that's
Go
good.
ahead.
I think we're asking a lot of people right now to come in for a day, sometimes it's been 3, and to take 120 votes. And I think that's a lot. And I know people have said, oh, well, then we should go to 2 a year. It's not that easy because of the budget cycle. And we are doing 2 a year in recent years, but not, usually this special town meeting is special and, focused on 1 or 2 bigger items. But I feel like that is asking a lot. And that's why I just want people to have the option to say, hey, we don't want to do that anymore. That's really how I think about it. And give people a chance to say, we'll come and we'll try to be more participatory at the ballot box, which we already are, or to come to the meetings that this town council is going to have and get involved with 1 or 2 issues that are really important to me, or maybe it's 20. But that way, there's a more consistent system instead of, hey, I've really got to get up to speed on 120 things right now, just today. And, we don't raise our hands anymore. It's on a clicker. So you're not looking around the room to see if your friend is doing that, and being influenced by them in that way. It's really, you've got to figure it out when you're there or, in the time leading up to it. And I do think that, as Laura pointed to, we have a system that I think is very interesting. I've loved being part of it. I mean, I think that all the committees, I always say the Tree Advisory Committee is my favorite committee. Like, I love that we have them. I hope that a lot of those committees will stay. But it can get convoluted for people. And I've been on these committees for a while, and I'd say it took me 2 or 3 years before I've fully, and I'll never fully understand it, I don't think, but really kind of grasp how it works. And I think we're asking a lot of people to say, hey, you need to go to Capcom, you need to go to Affordable Housing Trust, you need to go to all these committees in order to make an informed vote on that one day. I think that is asking a lot of the voters. So, but that's, again, the voters get to decide that, which is what's great about the process.
Thanks, Jill. Tom?
Jill, if you weren't on FinCom, you too could be on Tree Advisory Committee if you wanted to be, you know that? So we'll wait for that day. So you guys have heard me drone on in the committee for hours and hours about all this stuff, but I just wanted to bring up a couple little points that really concern me as a citizen. I'm not wearing my select board hat here, but just generally on elections, which is factionalization and money in politics and advocacy groups. So if you have 9 counselors, they're going to be on staggered terms. You could get big swings in elections. One thing that is really good about Nantucket is that our elections are very grassroots. I spent $1,200 of my own money to do signs. I spent no other money. I didn't raise any money. It was all word of mouth and calling people and out there. If Nantucket has some of the most expensive dirt in the world and there's a lot of big issues and things going on here, you better believe that if we go to a town council, that outside advocacy groups, for whatever it is, name your issue, I'm not going to put a name on one, but it's going to start supporting potential candidates. And that could be outside influence, that could be money influence. I don't mean bribes, I just mean outside influence. So I think that's something that folks should really think about in this kind of, Caroline or somebody said this before, in the trade-offs basket of what we'd be going towards. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I hate that I'm like always the negative person bringing up stuff on this committee, but it's to my place, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
I think it's great that you bring it up. I think that should absolutely be discussed. So I think it's really important. That really could happen, I suppose, but it also, we've seen some outside influence now. So do we think that that will increase with that board? They will have a lot fewer people to try to influence. It's true. I'm glad you bring it up.
Any other questions from the audience or on Zoom? No? I have to say, this has been a fascinating, I'm sorry, John, sure. There's only 8 of us in the room. I mean, why not? So.
That 20% thing, just to let everybody know, going back to that 20% about, since we only get 23% the ballot every year, that's almost like 100%. So if that could get lowered, don't you think that would be better?
How about 19.87?
I'm just saying, it's more like 100%.
Well, anyway. Just don't see it that way, but.
We have 9 people here in the room, so we could all run for town council.
Again, seriously, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming, expressing your views, asking some good questions. We'll certainly take this back. If you have any other thoughts, you can feel free to reach out to any of us individually. There is a Jeff. I never remember the email for the council.
You can find it on the website, the town website. There's a town council study committee page. There's a draft of the charter available on that page as well. There's a contact us if you just want. It's easy email address. It's just tcsc@nantucket-ma.gov. You can send any comments in. Again, we meet pretty regular on Wednesdays from 3 to 5 on kind of alternate Wednesdays. Those are all public meetings. They're posted. You can come and share your thoughts there too.
We have.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, we have one more info session on Monday at the Athenaeum, 5:30 to 7:30. There will not be any electronic Zoom. That the technology didn't seem to work too well at the Athenaeum, so that'll be kind of just an in-person discussion. So you're welcome to come back for that if you want to keep arguing and discussing. But with that, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you all very, very much.